All right, in this lesson we're going to learn a little bit about slope. So if you want to title your notes MSA number 4, slope, that would be very helpful. All right, when we're looking at slope, you are pretty familiar with slope as the rate of change. Another thing I want you to get comfortable with thinking of as slope is the steepness of a line. Slope is the steepness of a line. Okay, so a line that was like this, that would have a greater slope than a line that was like this, more flat. Okay. Slope, here are 3 ways to think about slope, or it's really 2 in just notation, but slope is rise over run. So rise, that's how far you're going up or down. Run, that's how far you're going right or left. Okay, so slope is always rise over run, and that's rise divided by run. We can find the slope by figuring out the change in y over the change in x. You see these lovely little triangles here. They're called delta y, it's a Greek letter. And delta just means change, and we're looking at this math notation. So that just means the change in y over the change in x, or delta y over delta x. So when I'm trying to figure out slope, I'm going to be looking at those 2 concepts. I'm going to give you a quick example and we'll work more on the page. But if I have 2 points on a line and it goes from like 1, 3, we'll say to 8, 15, and I'm trying to figure out the slope, I want to look at how far did the y's change. So I look at my y's. This is a y3 and this is a y15. So from 3 to 15, I notice it's changed by 12. It went up 12, so positive 12. And then if I look at the change in x, I look from 1 to 8, it went over and it went to the right, it went over 7. So 12 over 7, 12 sevenths would be my slope. Okay, I'm going to show you 4 graphs. And what I want you to think about is if all I do is show you the line, what do you know about the slope? So for here, this first one, okay, I don't actually want you to figure out what the slope is, but I want you to just look and notice that it's going up from left to right. Anytime you have a line that's going up from left to right, we say it's a positive slope. Positive slope. Okay. The second one, you should notice that it's going down from left to right. Hopefully I said left to right last time. Going down left to right, and when it goes down left to right, that's a negative slope. Sometimes you've seen lines that like this that are perfectly flat. They're not going up or down. Anytime you see a line like this, it's a 0 slope. And this last type is the new one. Okay? Sometimes there is a vertical line. What I want you to know about this, if it's a vertical line, your rise could be any number you want depending on what points you pick. Okay, so in that case, the points I picked look like my rise was 6. But no matter what, your run is 0. If you try to divide 6 by 0, you cannot do it. Try to divide 6 things into no groups. It can't be done. Try it on your calculator. You'll get an error. So 6 divided by 0, when we have something like that, we call it an undefined slope. So a vertical line will have an undefined slope. So you should be able to pick out which one of these 4 it is just by looking at the line without doing any calculations. Okay. Now let's do some problems that I want you to try on your own and see if you can get them right. Okay, so the first one, find the slope of the line that goes through 2, 5, and 3, 2. So I'm going to remember that my slope is rise over run, which I like to think of as change in y over change in x. And I'm going to go ahead and look at my change in my y's and my change in my x. So I notice in my y's it goes from 5 to 2. So it went from 5 to 2, it changed by going down 3. So I'm going to say my rise is negative 3. My run, my change in x, it goes from 2, it starts at 2 and it goes to 3. So it goes up by 1, a positive 1. So I've got negative 3 over 1, my slope is negative 3. Okay? All right, sometimes we get a little trickier, like this table below. I want you to try this on your own again, and then just come back and pause and see if you got it right if you're working on this at home. Okay, so find the slope and the y-intercept in this table. So the slope, the same thing as the rate, remember. So we like to see how much it's going up by in y. So 9 to 17, that goes up by 8. 17 to 25, it also goes up by 8. 4 to 6 goes up by 2 and by 2. Okay, So we're looking at the slope, which is the rate, and a lot of times before we filled in all the gaps and tried to figure out how much it went up every one. But with this new method of rise over run, I won't actually have to do that. I can just divide. So I'm going, my change in y is 8, and my change in x is 2, which means my slope is 8 divided by 2, which is 4. Okay, so my slope is 4. To get my y-intercept, you can do one of two strategies. So one thing that you could do, and you're familiar with, is working back in the table. So you're trying to find when x is 0. So I'm gonna just keep the same pattern going. 8, 6, 4. I'm gonna go back to 2, back to 0, going down by 2 every time. We'll get the same in the y, going down by 8. It's 1, down by 8 again, -7. So right here, when x is 0, y is -7. That means that my y-intercept is -7. And if you recall your slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope, b is your y-intercept. So if I was going to write an equation of this line, I could say y equals 4x minus 7. Okay. And I think it would be important for me to teach you a technique that I really like, because I find that it makes a lot of the equation solving process a lot easier. Especially if I give you numbers like 30 and bigger on the table, and you really don't want to count back to 0. One strategy that I could do is, once I figure out that my slope is 4, I know that my equation is y equals 4x plus or minus something. So I can just pick any point I want. Let me pick the point 825 just because I see it, it's right there. And so what you know, and you guys are pretty good at this, is 8 is x and 25 is y. So I would say 25, I'm plugging that in for y, equals 4 times 8, which I'm plugging in for x, plus or minus something. Okay, so 25 equals 32, 4 times 8, 32. And I have to think, what do I have to add or subtract to get there? It's like 32 plus -7 works. So lo and behold, that's my y-intercept. And I found that the same thing when I counted back on the table. It's just a little bit different strategy. Okay, so y equals 4x minus 7 is my entire answer. All right, last one. Let's see if you can do it. This is the really hard kind. So find slope and y-intercept here. I didn't even give you a table. All I did is give you 2 points, -2, 5, and 4, 14. So I want you to figure out the slope, and I want you to figure out the y-intercept. And so when I'm working on this again, I'm going to look at change in y over change in x, and it's really good to figure out the slope first. It makes the y-intercept much easier. So if I go here for for change in y, it went from 5 to 14. It went up by 9. And for my change in y, it went from -2 to 4, so it went up by 6. So I have 9 6, that equals 3 halves. Okay, or 1.5 if you want to write it like that, your choice. Okay, and then I'm going to do that second strategy that I showed you just to practice it. So I know that my equation is going to start out like y equals 1.5x plus something. And I'm going to pick a point. I'm going to pick 4, 14 just because they're both positive and I think I might have less chance of making a mistake. So I know that y is 14. So I know that 14 has to equal 1.5 times my x, which is 4, plus or minus something. Okay? So 1.5 times 4, that's 6. So I'm just looking, 14 equals 6 plus what? Oh, it's 8. Okay? So I think my y-intercept is 8, and my equation should be y equals 1.5x plus 8. And just to double check, I'm going to check if my other point works, because, you know, we're kind of new at this and we might have made a mistake. So let's prove that that's on the line and see if we got it right. So y is 5 in that case. Does 5 actually equal 1.5 times -2 plus 8, or did I mess up? 1.5 times -2 is -3. -3 plus 8 is 5. So that checks out because both sides are 5 and I like it. Okay, I hope this helps you a good bit with slope and gives you a reference guide to look back at. And good luck practicing it.